The morning sun beat down mercilessly on Fort Braxton as 18-year-old Marcus Rivera stepped off the transport bus. His crisp new uniform hung awkwardly on his lean frame, and his freshly shaved head gleamed with nervous sweat. The other recruits around him looked equally uncomfortable, but Marcus felt especially out of place. While most of his fellow cadets came from military families or had ROTC experience, Marcus had grown up in the rough neighborhoods of East LA, where joining the army was seen as either a last resort or a death sentence. "Look what we got here," sneered Sergeant Thompson, a barrel-chested man with 20 years of service etched into the lines of his weathered face. "Another city boy thinks he can play soldier." The other drill instructors chuckled as they looked Marcus up and down. "What's your story, Rivera? Daddy issues? Can't find a real job?" Marcus kept his eyes forward, remembering his grandfather's words about dignity under fire. "No excuse, Sergeant. Ready to serve, Sergeant." "Ready to serve," Thompson mocked. "We'll see about that, street rat." The first weeks at Fort Braxton were brutal for everyone, but Marcus felt the extra weight of constant scrutiny. During morning PT, while other cadets struggled with the 5-mile runs, Marcus found himself naturally keeping pace with the instructors. Years of running from gang territory and dodging trouble had given him endurance that surprised even him. But instead of praise, his performance earned him suspicious looks. "Rivera thinks he's hot stuff," muttered Cadet Johnson, a tall blonde from Texas whose father was a decorated colonel. "Probably learned to run from the cops." The other cadets laughed, but Marcus said nothing. He had learned long ago that words were often just noise, and actions spoke louder than insults. In the mess hall, Marcus sat alone most days. The cliques had formed quickly: the military brats, the college boys, the small-town heroes. Marcus didn't fit into any of these groups. When he tried to join conversations, the talk would often turn to family traditions, military academies, or experiences he couldn't relate to. "My dad says the army's going soft," Johnson announced one evening, loud enough for Marcus to hear. "They're letting anyone in these days. Gangbangers, welfare cases, you name it." Cadet Williams, whose grandfather had served in Vietnam, nodded along. "Standards are definitely dropping. Some people just don't have what it takes to be real soldiers." Marcus focused on his food, but he could feel their eyes on him. He had faced worse in the streets, where disrespect could get you killed. Here, it was just noise. The real test came during weapons training. Marcus had never held a military rifle before, but he approached the M4 carbine with the same careful attention he brought to everything else. While other cadets fumbled with their weapons, bragging about hunting trips and gun collections, Marcus quietly listened to every instruction. "All right, ladies," barked Staff Sergeant Martinez. "Time to see if you can hit the broadside of a barn. Johnson, you're up first." Johnson strutted to the firing line with confidence. "Piece of cake, Sergeant. Been shooting since I was 8. His first few shots went wide. Very wide. The drill instructors exchanged glances as Johnson's face reddened. By the end of his round, he had barely qualified at the lowest level. "Next up, Rivera," Martinez called out. Marcus approached the line methodically. He had watched Johnson's mistakes, noting the improper stance and rushed breathing. Years of watching and learning from others' errors in dangerous situations had made him a careful observer. He settled into position, controlled his breathing like his grandfather had taught him during their weekend trips to the desert, and squeezed the trigger with steady pressure. The first shot hit the target dead center, then the second, and the third. By the time he finished his round, Marcus had achieved a perfect score. The range fell silent. "Beginner's luck," someone muttered. But Martinez was studying the target through his binoculars with a puzzled expression. "Rivera, you ever shoot before?" "No, Sergeant." "No hunting, no range times." "No, Sergeant." Martinez looked at the target again, then at Marcus. "Report to my office after chow." The mess hall buzzed with whispered conversations that evening. Marcus tried to ignore the stares and speculation as he ate his dinner quickly and reported to Martinez's office. "Sit down, son," Martinez said, his tone less harsh than usual. "That was some impressive shooting today." "Thank you, Sergeant." "You sure you've never fired a weapon before?" Marcus met his eyes directly. "Never touched a gun in my life, Sergeant. My grandfather always said they brought nothing but trouble." Martinez leaned back in his chair. "Your grandfather sounds like a smart man. What did he do?" "Construction worker. Came here from Mexico with nothing, built a good life through hard work." "And you's why the armies?" Marcus had been asked this question many times, but he had never given the full answer. Something about Martinez's direct manner made him want to be honest. "My neighborhood is dying, Sergeant. Drugs, gangs, violence, good people trapped with no way out. I watched my grandfather work 2 jobs his whole life just to keep me off the streets. He died last year and I promised him I'd make something of myself. The army seemed like the best way to honor that promise. Martinez nodded slowly, the other cadets giving you trouble. Nothing I can't handle, Sergeant. I'm sure you can, but handling it and excelling despite it are 2 different things. You've got natural ability, Rivera. Don't let their ignorance hold you back. Over the following weeks, Marcus continued to excel in unexpected areas. During navigation exercises, while other cadets relied on GPS units and complained about the difficulty, Marcus used techniques his grandfather had taught him about reading the land. During survival training, his street-smart approach to finding resources and adapting to harsh conditions impressed even the most skeptical instructors. But with each success came more resentment from his fellow cadets. Teacher's pet, Johnson sneered after Marcus was selected to demonstrate proper field sanitation techniques. Bet the sergeants feel sorry for the charity case. The breaking point came during a particularly challenging field exercise. The cadets had been divided into squads and given a complex mission involving reconnaissance, communication, and tactical movement. Marcus found himself assigned to Johnson's squad, along with Williams and 2 other cadets who had made their feelings about him clear. Listen up, street boy, Johnson said as they prepared their gear. Don't think you're going to show off on my watch. You follow orders and stay out of the way. Marcus nodded. He had no interest in conflict with his fellow soldiers. The mission began before dawn. Their objective was to reach a designated checkpoint, gather intelligence, and return without being detected by the opposing force, a group of advanced cadets playing the role of enemy soldiers. Johnson immediately made a critical error, choosing a route that took them through open ground instead of using the available cover. Marcus noticed the mistake but said nothing. It wasn't his place to question the squad leader. Within an hour, they were pinned down by simulated enemy fire. Johnson panicked, his privileged background offering no guidance for the chaos of combat simulation. What do we do? Williams whispered frantically as the sound of blank ammunition echoed around them. Johnson's face was pale with confusion and fear. The other cadets looked to him for leadership, but he was clearly overwhelmed. Marcus studied their situation carefully. He could see a path through the terrain that would allow them to flank the opposing position and complete their mission. But speaking up would mean challenging Johnson's authority. Johnson, he said quietly, there's a way out of this. Shut up, Rivera, I'm thinking. But Johnson wasn't thinking clearly. His next order was to retreat, a direct violation of their mission parameters that would result in automatic failure for the entire squad. Marcus made a choice that would change everything. With respect, that's not going to work, he said, loud enough for the whole squad to hear. The terrain gives us an opportunity to the east. We can use that drainage ditch and the tree line to move around their flank. Johnson's face flushed with anger. I didn't ask for your opinion. Our mission is to gather that intelligence and return. Retreating means we all fail. Williams looked between them nervously. Maybe we should listen to him, Johnson. He's been right about a lot of things. He's been lucky, Johnson snapped, and I'm in charge here. The simulated enemy fire continued, and precious time was ticking away. Marcus could see the instructors watching from their observation posts, evaluating how the cadets would handle leadership under pressure. Look, Marcus said evenly, we can argue about this later. Right now we have a job to do. Are we going to complete the mission or not? Something in his tone cut through Johnson's panic. The other cadets were looking at Marcus with respect they had never shown before. Johnson's authority was slipping away and he knew it. Fine, he said through gritted teeth. Show us your brilliant plan, street boy. Marcus quickly outlined his strategy, keeping his voice calm and professional despite Johnson's hostility. The plan was sound: use the natural terrain to approach the target undetected, gather the required intelligence, and extract through a different route. The execution was flawless. Marcus moved with a quiet confidence that surprised his squadmates, reading the ground and anticipating the opposing force's positions with an accuracy that seemed almost supernatural. Within 30 minutes, they had completed their objective and were heading back to base. How did you know they would position their overwatch there? Williams asked as they walked. Body language, Marcus replied. When people think they're hidden, they get comfortable. Comfortable people make small movements, you just have to know how to look. Johnson said nothing during the entire return trip. The debriefing was conducted by Major Patterson, a career officer known for his no-nonsense approach to evaluation. He reviewed each squad's performance with typical military precision. Squad 7, he announced, looking directly at Johnson. Mission success, but I noticed some interesting leadership dynamics. Johnson, you're the designated squad leader. Tell me about your decision-making process. Johnson stammered through an explanation that made it clear he had been overwhelmed and confused. Major Patterson's expression remained neutral, but his questions grew more pointed. And the flanking maneuver, whose idea was that? Johnson glanced at Marcus, his jaw tight. It was a team effort, sir. I see. Rivera step forward. Marcus approached the major with proper military bearing. The instructors reported that you demonstrated exceptional tactical awareness and leadership under pressure. Yet you're not the squad leader. Explain. Sir, my role was to support the mission and follow orders. When circumstances required adaptation, I provided input to help ensure success. Diplomatic answer, but leadership isn't always about rank, is it, Rivera? No, sir, leadership is about making sure everyone gets home safe and the mission gets done. Major Patterson nodded approvingly. Interesting perspective from someone with no formal military background. That evening, word of the exercise spread through the barracks like wildfire. Marcus tried to keep a low profile, but the other cadets looked at him differently now. Some with respect, others with increased resentment. Johnson cornered him near the showers after lights out. Don't think this changes anything, he hissed. You're still nothing but street trash playing dress-up. One good day doesn't make you a soldier. Marcus looked at him calmly. I never claimed to be anything special. I'm just here to do my job. Your job is to remember your place. Some of us come from real military families. We've earned our respect. You're just a charity case the Army is trying to make feel better about itself. Marcus turned away without responding. He had heard similar words his entire life from people who thought his zip code determined his worth. They were just noise. But Johnson wasn't finished. You know what I think? I think you're dangerous. People like you don't belong in the military. You don't understand honor or tradition or what it really means to serve. You're just here for yourself. Marcus stopped and turned back. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but carried weight. You're wrong about one thing, Johnson. I'm not here for myself. I'm here for every kid in my neighborhood who thinks they don't have options. I'm here for my grandfather who worked himself to death believing in the American dream. I'm here because someone has to prove that where you come from doesn't determine where you can go. He paused, studying Johnson's face. But you're probably right about one thing. I am dangerous. I'm dangerous to people who think they deserve respect just because of their last name or their daddy's rank. I'm dangerous to the idea that some people are born to lead and others are born to follow. So if that makes you uncomfortable, maybe you should ask yourself why. Johnson's face was red with anger, but he had no response. Marcus walked away, leaving him standing alone in the hallway. The next morning brought new challenges, and Marcus approached them with the same quiet determination he brought to everything else. He was beginning to understand that his journey in the Army would be about more than just personal success. It would be about proving that excellence could come from anywhere, and that true leadership was earned through action, not inherited through privilege. As he laced up his boots for morning PT, Marcus thought about his grandfather's words. Mijo, they will always try to make you feel small. But if you do the work and do it better than anyone else, eventually they have to notice. It was going to be a long road, but Marcus Rivera was just getting started. 3 months into basic training, Fort Braxton hummed with the controlled chaos of military preparation. The initial hazing and uncertainty had settled into a rhythm of relentless challenge and gradual improvement. For Marcus Rivera, each day brought new opportunities to prove himself, though the social dynamics remained as treacherous as any obstacle course. The morning reveille echoed across the base as Marcus snapped to attention with the precision that had become second nature. Around him, his fellow cadets demonstrated varying levels of military bearing, some sharp and confident, others still struggling with the transition from civilian life. Marcus had found his place somewhere in the middle of the pack officially, but those paying attention knew his capabilities ran much deeper. Listen up, maggots, bellowed Drill Sergeant Hopkins, a mountain of a man whose voice could strip paint. Today we start advanced tactical training. Some of you think you're ready to be warriors. Today we separate the pretenders from the real soldiers. Johnson straightened his shoulders, clearly anticipating another chance to demonstrate his superiority. His confidence had been shaken by recent events, but his family pride wouldn't let him accept that a street kid from LA might be his equal. We'll be conducting urban warfare simulations, Hopkins continued. Room clearing, hostage situations, coordinated assault techniques. These scenarios require split-second decisions and absolute trust in your fellow soldiers. Any questions? Cadet Williams raised his hand tentatively. Sergeant, will we be working in our regular squads? Hopkins grinned, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. Negative, I'm mixing things up. Rivera, you'll be team leader for today's exercise. The announcement hit the assembled cadets like a physical blow. Marcus felt every eye turn toward him, some curious, others openly hostile. Johnson's face went through several shades of red before settling on a dangerous purple. Sergeant, Johnson spoke up, his voice carefully controlled. With respect, Rivera has no leadership experience. Wouldn't it be more appropriate to? Did I ask for your opinion, Johnson? Hopkins's voice could have frozen water. Rivera showed tactical innovation and clear thinking under pressure. Today we see if he can lead from the front instead of just offering suggestions. Marcus stepped forward, accepting the responsibility without fanfare. Yes, Sergeant, who's on my team? Johnson, Williams, Martinez, and Thompson, five-man team for a complex urban scenario. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Marcus would be leading the same cadets who had spent months questioning his right to be there. An hour later, they stood outside a specially constructed training facility designed to simulate urban combat conditions. The building was a maze of rooms, corridors, and obstacles, complete with hidden cameras to record every decision and mistake. Your mission is simple, explained Staff Sergeant Kelly, the exercise coordinator. Hostile forces have taken control of this building and are holding civilian hostages on the third floor. Your team must clear the building room by room, neutralize the threats, and extract the hostages without casualties. She handed Marcus a tactical radio and a folder containing building blueprints. You have 20 minutes to study the layout and brief your team. Time starts now. Marcus spread the blueprints on a nearby table, his mind immediately processing the tactical challenges. The building had multiple entry points, but most led through easily defensible choke points. The stairwells could become death traps if not approached correctly. Johnson, you're our best marksman after me, Marcus began, ignoring the surprised looks. I want you on point for long corridors where we might need precision shots. Johnson looked skeptical but nodded. Williams, you're quick on your feet. You'll handle communications and coordinate with any external support. Martinez, you've got the strongest shoulder. You're our breacher if we need to go through locked doors. As Marcus outlined his strategy, something interesting happened. The cadet stopped thinking about his background and started listening to his tactical analysis. His plan was methodical, accounting for multiple contingencies and prioritizing team safety while maintaining mission effectiveness. What about Thompson? Williams asked. Marcus looked at the quiet cadet who had mostly stayed out of the social conflicts. Thompson watches our six. Nobody gets behind us without him knowing about it. And you, Johnson's question carried a challenge. I coordinate movement and make the hard calls, Marcus replied simply. Any questions about the plan? The silence stretched for several seconds before Johnson spoke. It's a good plan, let's do it. The simulation began with the team stacked outside the building's main entrance. Marcus used hand signals to communicate their approach, a skill he had picked up quickly despite having no formal training. His grandfather's lessons about observation and patience served him well in reading the simulated environment. The first floor clearing went smoothly. Marcus's decision to use overlapping fields of fire and methodical room-by-room advancement kept the team safe while maintaining momentum. When they encountered their first simulated enemies, Johnson's marksmanship and Marcus's tactical positioning resulted in quick, clean neutralizations. Movement on the second floor, Williams reported through the radio. Sounds like multiple contacts. Marcus studied the blueprint in his mind, visualizing the layout above them. They know we're coming now. They'll try to funnel us into a kill zone at the top of the stairs. So what do we do? Martinez asked. Marcus smiled grimly. We don't give them what they expect. Instead of taking the main stairwell, Marcus led the team through a maintenance area he had noticed on the blueprints. It was cramped and dangerous, but it brought them up behind the enemy position instead of directly into their guns. The flanking maneuver worked perfectly. The simulated enemies were positioned to ambush anyone coming up the stairs, leaving them vulnerable to attack from behind. Marcus's team cleared the second floor without taking a single casualty. Hostages are on the third floor, Marcus reminded his team as they prepared for the final assault. From here on, every shot has to be perfect. We can't afford collateral damage. The third floor presented their greatest challenge yet. The enemy had positioned themselves in the same room as the hostages, creating a complex scenario that required both tactical skill and careful judgment. Marcus studied the situation through a partially opened door. 3 simulated enemies, each positioned to threaten the hostages if the room was rushed. A direct assault would be disastrous. Johnson, he whispered, can you take the one by the window from this angle? Johnson studied the shot carefully. It's tight but doable. Williams, as soon as Johnson fires, you create a distraction by the north door. Martinez, Thompson, we go in from the south the moment their attention shifts. The coordination had to be perfect. One mistake and the exercise would end in simulated civilian casualties. On my count, Marcus whispered, 3, 2, 1, execute. Johnson's shot was perfect, eliminating his target instantly. Williams's distraction worked exactly as planned, drawing the attention of the remaining enemies. Marcus and his team burst through the south entrance with perfect timing, neutralizing the final threats before they could react. Exercise complete, came the announcement over the loudspeakers. All hostiles neutralized, 0 civilian casualties, minimal collateral damage, outstanding execution. The team stood in the aftermath of their success, breathing hard from the adrenaline and exertion. But more than that, something fundamental had changed in the dynamics between them. That was, Williams started, then shook his head in amazement. That was incredible leadership. Johnson was staring at Marcus with an expression that mixed surprise, respect, and something that might have been embarrassment. You read that situation perfectly. Every call you made was right. Marcus accepted the praise quietly. It was a team effort. Everyone did their job. No, Thompson spoke up for the first time that day. You did more than that. You made us better than we thought we could be. The debriefing session was conducted by Major Patterson himself, along with several other senior officers who had observed the exercise. Marcus stood at attention with his team, waiting for their evaluation. In 20 years of conducting these exercises, Patterson began, I've rarely seen such textbook tactical execution combined with adaptive leadership. Rivera, your performance today was exceptional. Thank you, sir. My team performed superbly. Yes, they did, but they performed superbly because you put them in positions to succeed and gave them clear, achievable objectives. That's what real leadership looks like. Patterson turned to address the other cadets. Johnson, your marksmanship was outstanding when properly directed. Williams, your communications work was flawless. Martinez, Thompson, excellent execution throughout. He paused, studying Marcus carefully. Rivera, I'm recommending you for advanced leadership training. We need soldiers who can think on their feet and inspire excellence in others. The news spread through the barracks within hours. Marcus found himself approached by cadets who had previously ignored or dismissed him. But the conversation that mattered most came from an unexpected source. Johnson found him in the common area that evening, where Marcus was writing a letter to his sister back home. Can we talk? Johnson asked, his usual arrogance replaced by something approaching humility. Marcus looked up from his letter, sure. Johnson sat down heavily, clearly struggling with what he wanted to say. I owe you an apology. Actually, I owe you several apologies. You don't owe me anything. Yeah, I do. Johnson met his eyes directly. I've been acting like an ass because I thought I knew what kind of soldier you'd be based on where you came from. Today you proved that I was completely wrong. Marcus set down his pen, giving Johnson his full attention. My father's a colonel, Johnson continued. My grandfather was a general. I grew up thinking that gave me some kind of automatic qualification to lead. But watching you today, I realized I don't know the first thing about real leadership. Leadership isn't about family history, Marcus said quietly. It's about taking care of your people and accomplishing the mission. You can learn that. Maybe, but it's going to take time to unlearn all the garbage I thought I knew. Johnson hesitated. Would you help me? I mean, would you consider letting me learn from you? The request was so unexpected that Marcus wasn't sure he had heard correctly. You want me to help you? You're the best natural leader I've ever seen. If I'm going to be an officer someday, I need to learn what you already know instinctively. Marcus considered the request carefully. 3 months ago, Johnson had been his primary tormentor. Now he was asking for help with genuine humility. It would have been easy to refuse, to let Johnson struggle the way Marcus had struggled with social acceptance. But that wasn't who Marcus Rivera was. Okay, he said finally, but I'm not going to go easy on you just because you asked nicely. Johnson smiled for the first time since Marcus had known him. I wouldn't want you to. Over the following weeks, their relationship transformed from hostility to mutual respect. Johnson proved that his arrogance had been masking genuine insecurity about living up to his family's reputation. With proper guidance and honest feedback, he began developing real leadership skills. Marcus, meanwhile, continued to excel in every area of training. His performance in combat simulations was consistently outstanding, but his ability to bring out the best in other cadets was what really set him apart. Instructors began using him as an example of what right looked like, both in technical skills and leadership presence. The change wasn't lost on the other cadets either. Williams started seeking Marcus's advice on everything from tactical planning to personal problems. Martinez and Thompson began studying Marcus's methods, trying to understand what made him so effective under pressure. But perhaps the most significant development was the way Marcus had begun to see himself. For months, he had focused on proving that he belonged, that his background didn't disqualify him from success. Now he was beginning to understand that his background might actually be an asset, that the skills he had learned on the streets of LA translated into tactical advantages and leadership insights that his peers couldn't match. One evening, as Marcus walked across the base after a particularly challenging day of training, he noticed a commotion near the administrative buildings. A black helicopter was settling onto the landing pad, its rotors whipping up clouds of dust and debris. As the aircraft touched down, Marcus could see that this wasn't a routine transport. The helicopter bore markings he didn't recognize, and the ground crew was treating its arrival with unusual urgency. "Wonder what that's about," Williams said, appearing beside him with Johnson close behind. Marcus watched as the helicopter's engines spooled down and figures began emerging from the aircraft. Even from a distance, he could tell that whoever was arriving was important enough to command immediate attention from the base's senior staff. "Probably just another inspection," Johnson said, but his voice carried uncertainty. "My dad says the brass are always showing up to check on training programs." But Marcus noticed something the others missed. The ground crew wasn't treating this like a routine inspection. Their body language suggested that whoever was in that helicopter was more important than a typical visiting officer. "Come on," Williams said. "Whatever it is, it's not our business. We've got equipment maintenance before lights out." As they walked away, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that the helicopter's arrival would somehow affect him directly. It was an irrational thought. He was just a cadet, invisible to anyone with real authority. But the feeling persisted as they returned to their daily routine. He had no way of knowing that his instincts were absolutely correct, or that the next few hours would change the trajectory of his military career in ways he couldn't imagine. The next morning brought an unusual tension to Fort Braxton. Word spread quickly through the barracks that the previous evening's helicopter had carried someone significant enough to prompt emergency staff meetings and sudden changes to the training schedule. Marcus noticed the difference immediately. Drill sergeants were more focused, officers moved with greater urgency, and there was an underlying current of nervous energy throughout the base. "Attention all cadets," came the announcement over the base intercom during morning chow. "Advanced training exercise schedules have been modified. Selected cadets will be notified of special assignments. All personnel will maintain highest standards of military bearing and performance." Marcus exchanged glances with Johnson across the mess hall table. They had grown closer over the past weeks, their initial animosity replaced by mutual respect and genuine friendship. Johnson had proven to be a quick learner, and his family connections had begun providing insights that helped Marcus understand the broader context of their training. "My dad texted me last night," Johnson said quietly, leaning forward to avoid being overheard. "He said there's been some kind of high-level review of the training program here, something about identifying exceptional talent for special assignments." Williams looked up from his breakfast with interest. "Special assignments like what?" "Don't know," Johnson replied. "But when the brass starts paying attention to individual cadets during basic training, it usually means someone's career is about to take an interesting turn." Marcus felt a familiar twist in his stomach, the same sensation he had experienced as a child when teachers singled him out for attention. In his experience, being noticed by authority figures could go either way. Sometimes it meant opportunity, but more often it meant scrutiny and pressure he wasn't prepared for. The morning's training began with an unexpected change. Instead of their regular drill instructors, the cadets found themselves facing Major Patterson and two officers Marcus didn't recognize. A stern woman with colonel's eagles, and a man whose insignia suggested he was from outside the traditional Army structure. "Cadets," Major Patterson announced, "today's exercise will be different from anything you've experienced so far. We'll be conducting individual assessments in realistic scenarios designed to test your decision-making under extreme pressure." The unknown colonel stepped forward. "I'm Colonel Sarah Mitchell, and this is Agent David Carter from Defense Intelligence. We're here to observe specific aspects of your performance that aren't typically measured in standard training evaluations." Marcus felt every instinct telling him that this was connected to the mysterious helicopter arrival. Agent Carter's presence particularly intrigued him. Why would military intelligence be interested in basic training exercises? "The scenario is straightforward," Colonel Mitchell continued. You'll be placed in a simulated crisis situation requiring immediate action. Your responses will be evaluated not just for tactical effectiveness, but for leadership potential, moral reasoning, and adaptability under stress. She paused, scanning the assembled cadets with practiced assessment. Rivera, you're first. The announcement sent ripples of surprise through the group. Marcus stepped forward, maintaining military bearing despite the questions racing through his mind. Being selected first could mean anything: recognition of his recent successes or suspicion about his unconventional background. Follow me, Agent Carter said, leading Marcus toward a building he had never entered before. The interior was unlike any training facility Marcus had seen. Instead of obstacle courses or shooting ranges, it contained sophisticated simulation equipment that seemed more suited to a high-tech command center than a basic training base. Have a seat, Colonel Mitchell instructed, gesturing to a chair facing a wall of monitors. What you're about to experience will feel completely real. The technology creates fully immersive scenarios that engage all your senses and trigger genuine stress responses. Agent Carter activated several control panels. Remember, your actions have consequences in these simulations. Every decision you make will be recorded and analyzed. Are you ready? Marcus nodded, though he wasn't sure anyone could truly be ready for something they didn't understand. The world around him shifted. Suddenly he was standing in what appeared to be a war-torn city street. The sounds of distant gunfire and shouting filled the air, and smoke drifted across his vision from unseen fires. The simulation was so realistic that his body immediately responded with heightened alertness and increased heart rate. A voice crackled through a radio on his uniform. Sergeant Rivera, this is command. We have a situation developing 2 blocks from your position. Civilian bus has been taken hostage by unknown militants. Local police have the area surrounded but lack tactical capability to resolve the situation safely. Marcus looked around, orienting himself to the simulated environment. The level of detail was extraordinary. He could smell the smoke, feel the heat from nearby fires, even detect the subtle vibrations of helicopter rotors somewhere overhead. What assets do I have available? He responded, slipping naturally into the role. You have a 4-man team en route to your position. ETA 2 minutes. Limited equipment, standard small arms, and basic tactical gear. No heavy weapons, no air support. The militants have threatened to execute hostages if law enforcement advances. Marcus began moving toward the reported location, his mind automatically processing the tactical challenges. Hostage situations required precise execution and careful risk assessment. One wrong decision could result in civilian casualties. As he approached the scene, he could see the bus surrounded by police vehicles. Through his simulated radio, he could hear the chaos of multiple agencies trying to coordinate their response. Local SWAT was demanding immediate action, while negotiators were insisting on more time to establish communication with the hostiles. Rivera, what's your assessment? Came the voice from command. Marcus studied the situation carefully. The bus was positioned in an open area with limited cover for approach. The hostiles would have clear fields of fire in multiple directions, making a direct assault extremely dangerous. But he also noticed something the simulation designers probably intended him to see: a drainage system that ran beneath the street with access points that could potentially allow for a covert approach. Command, I need a schematic of the underground infrastructure in this area, and I need to know if we have anyone with demolitions experience. Underground approach? Interesting. Sending the schematics now. And yes, one of your team members has engineering background. Marcus's team arrived as he was studying the tunnel system on his tactical display. The 4 soldiers looked to him expectantly, waiting for orders in a situation that was growing more tense by the minute. Here's the situation, Marcus briefed them quickly. Direct assault will likely result in civilian casualties. We're going to use the storm drainage system to get close enough to the bus to neutralize the threats before they can harm the hostages. One of his team members, a compact soldier with demolitions expertise, studied the schematics. It's possible but risky. If they detect our movement, we'll be trapped underground with no way to help the hostages. Agreed, Marcus said. That's why we're going to create a diversion. 2-pronged approach. Part of the team creates visible activity on the surface to draw the hostiles' attention, while a smaller element approaches through the tunnels. He assigned roles quickly, placing his most reliable soldier in charge of the surface diversion while he led the underground approach with the demolitions expert. The plan required precise timing and communication, but it offered the best chance of resolving the situation without casualties. The execution was flawless. Marcus's surface team created enough activity to focus the militants' attention away from the bus, while his underground element emerged directly beneath the vehicle. Using carefully placed charges, they created a controlled breach that allowed them to neutralize the threats while protecting the hostages. Simulation complete, came the announcement. Excellent tactical innovation and execution, 0 civilian casualties, all objectives achieved. The simulated environment faded, leaving Marcus back in the chair facing Colonel Mitchell and Agent Carter. Both were studying readouts from various monitoring devices with intense focus. Impressive, Colonel Mitchell said finally. You demonstrated advanced tactical thinking, effective leadership under pressure, and creative problem-solving. Your stress indicators remained within optimal ranges throughout the scenario. Agent Carter looked up from his display. More importantly, you showed moral reasoning that prioritized civilian safety over mission expediency. Many candidates choose faster, more aggressive solutions that result in collateral damage. Marcus wasn't sure how to respond. I just tried to find the option that accomplished the mission with the least risk to innocent people. Exactly, Colonel Mitchell smiled. That kind of instinctive moral framework combined with tactical innovation is extremely rare, especially in someone with no formal military education. She exchanged a meaningful look with Agent Carter before continuing. Rivera, how much do you know about special operations? The question caught Marcus completely off guard. Just basic information, ma'am. I know they exist and handle high-risk missions. Special operations units are always looking for exceptional individuals who can perform under extreme pressure while maintaining ethical standards and tactical effectiveness, Agent Carter explained. Your performance today suggests you might have the qualities we look for. Marcus felt the world shifting beneath him again, though this time it was psychological rather than technological. Are you saying I'm being considered for special operations? We're saying you've demonstrated potential that deserves further evaluation, Colonel Mitchell replied carefully. But first, you need to complete basic training and advanced individual training. Excellence in simulation doesn't guarantee success in real-world conditions. Agent Carter leaned forward. However, if you're interested, certain opportunities might become available to you that wouldn't normally be offered to someone at your experience level. Accelerated training programs, specialized schools, assignments that could fast-track your development. What would that mean? Marcus asked. It means your military career could look very different from your current classmates, Colonel Mitchell said. More challenging, more dangerous, but also more impactful. The kind of assignments where individual excellence can make a real difference. Marcus thought about his grandfather's words about opportunity and preparation. This was clearly an opportunity, but was he prepared for what it might require? I'm interested, he said finally, but I want to earn any advancement through performance, not because someone thinks I have potential. Both officers smiled at that response. That's exactly what we hoped you'd say, Agent Carter said. Colonel Mitchell stood up. Complete your basic training at the top of your class. We'll be watching, and if you maintain this level of performance, we'll have another conversation. As Marcus left the building, his mind was spinning with possibilities and questions. The conversation had opened doors he hadn't even known existed, but it had also added pressure he wasn't sure he was ready for. He found Johnson, Williams, and the others waiting anxiously in the barracks. So what was that about? Williams asked immediately. Marcus considered how much to share. The officers hadn't told him to keep the conversation secret, but something told him that discretion was probably wise. Just an evaluation exercise. They had me run through some tactical simulations. Johnson studied his expression carefully. That's all, you were gone for 3 hours. It was a complex simulation, Marcus said, which was technically true. But Johnson knew him well enough by now to recognize when he was holding something back. Marcus, if something big is happening, you can tell us. We're your friends. The word hit Marcus harder than he expected. Friends. Growing up in East LA, he had learned to be suspicious of anyone who claimed friendship because loyalty was often conditional and temporary. But these soldiers had proven themselves in ways that his childhood acquaintances never had. They asked me about my interest in special operations, he said finally. The reaction was immediate and varied. Williams looked impressed, Johnson appeared concerned, and Martinez whistled low under his breath. Special Ops, Williams said, Marcus, that's huge, those guys are legends. Johnson's response was more thoughtful. It's also incredibly dangerous. Special operations forces have casualty rates that. I know the risks, Marcus interrupted, but they also have the opportunity to make a real difference, to do the kind of missions that actually matter. He looked at his friends, these soldiers who had become closer to him than anyone in his previous life. Besides, it's just a possibility. First, I have to finish basic training and prove I can handle advanced challenges. You'll handle them, Martinez said with quiet confidence. You handle everything. That evening, as Marcus lay in his bunk staring at the ceiling, he thought about the path that had brought him to this moment. 6 months ago, he had been just another kid from the streets with limited options and an uncertain future. Now he was being evaluated for opportunities he had never imagined. But with opportunity came responsibility, and Marcus was beginning to understand that his success wasn't just about personal achievement anymore. He was representing everyone who had been written off because of their background, everyone who had been told they didn't belong in positions of leadership and responsibility. The weight of that representation was both inspiring and terrifying. But as his grandfather had always said, the size of the challenge was just a measure of the importance of rising to meet it. And Marcus Rivera was just getting started. 2 weeks after the special evaluation, Marcus found himself leading by example in ways that surprised even him. The conversation with Colonel Mitchell and Agent Carter had remained confidential, but word had somehow spread that he was being considered for advanced opportunities. Rather than creating resentment, this news had elevated his status among the cadets in unexpected ways. Rivera's got the touch, he overheard one of the newer cadets saying during equipment maintenance. Whatever he's doing, it's working. The observation wasn't wrong. Marcus had finished first in every training exercise for the past month, but more importantly, he had begun developing a reputation as someone who could help struggling soldiers improve their performance. His patient teaching style and genuine concern for his fellow cadets had made him an unofficial mentor figure. Johnson had become his closest ally in this role. Having worked through his own prejudices and insecurities, Johnson now served as a bridge between Marcus and the cadets who might otherwise be intimidated by his growing reputation. You know what I realized, Johnson said one evening as they cleaned their weapons together. You don't just perform well under pressure, you make everyone around you perform better too. That's a rare gift. Marcus looked up from his rifle maintenance. It's not a gift, it's just paying attention to what people need and helping them get it. See, that's what I mean. You make it sound simple, but most people can't do what you do. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion outside the barracks. Through the window, Marcus could see several official vehicles pulling up to the administrative building, including what appeared to be the same black helicopter from 2 weeks earlier. Something's happening, Williams said, joining them at the window. That's a lot of brass for a routine visit. Marcus felt the familiar tingle of instinct that had served him well throughout his life. Whatever was happening, it was connected to his situation somehow. He couldn't explain how he knew, but the certainty was absolute. Within an hour, the base intercom crackled to life with an unusual announcement. Cadet Marcus Rivera, report to Building 7 immediately. Cadet Marcus Rivera to Building 7. The entire barracks fell silent. Building 7 was the administrative center where only senior officers and visiting officials conducted business. No cadet had ever been summoned there during Marcus's time at Fort Braxton. This is it, Johnson said quietly. Whatever they've been planning, it's happening now. Marcus stood up slowly, his mind racing through possibilities. The timing felt significant. 2 weeks was enough time for thorough background checks, security clearances, and high-level decision-making. Whatever happens, Williams said, extending his hand, it's been an honor serving with you. The sentiment was echoed by the other cadets, including several who had initially been hostile toward Marcus. As he walked toward Building 7, Marcus realized that he had accomplished something more important than personal success. He had earned genuine respect from his peers through consistent performance and character. Building 7's interior was more formal than any space Marcus had experienced on the base. Polished floors, portraits of military leaders, and an atmosphere that spoke of serious business conducted at the highest levels. A staff sergeant directed him to a conference room where he found himself facing an assembly that took his breath away. Colonel Mitchell and Agent Carter were present, but they were now joined by a 2-star general whose ribbons indicated extensive combat experience, a woman in civilian clothes whose bearing suggested high-level intelligence community, and a man whose subdued uniform markings Marcus didn't recognize, but who radiated the quiet authority of special operations. At ease, Rivera, the general said as Marcus snapped to attention. Have a seat. I'm General Patricia Hayes, and I believe you've met Colonel Mitchell and Agent Carter. Marcus sat carefully, every instinct telling him that this moment would define the rest of his military career. The woman beside me is Deputy Director Sarah Chen from the Defense Intelligence Agency, General Hayes continued. And this is Colonel James Morrison from Joint Special Operations Command. The introductions alone were enough to tell Marcus that this wasn't a routine advancement discussion. These were people who made decisions about national security and special operations at the highest levels. Rivera, General Hayes began, your performance over the past several months has been exceptional. Not just your individual achievements, but your demonstrated leadership capability and moral reasoning under pressure. Colonel Morrison leaned forward. We've been tracking your progress since the urban warfare simulation. Your tactical innovations and team leadership caught our attention, but it's your consistent ethical decision-making that really sets you apart. Deputy Director Chen opened a folder that Marcus assumed contained his complete background investigation. We've conducted a thorough review of your history, Rivera. Your childhood circumstances, family background, academic record, and every aspect of your time here at Fort Braxton. Marcus felt a familiar tension. Background investigations often focused on what people lacked rather than what they had accomplished. What we found, Chen continued, was a pattern of overcoming obstacles through determination and intelligence. Your high school teachers describe you as exceptionally bright but focused on practical application rather than academic theory. Your community members speak of someone who helped younger kids avoid gang involvement by setting a positive example. Agent Carter added, most significantly, everyone we spoke with emphasized your integrity. In an environment where cutting corners and looking out for yourself was the norm, you consistently chose the harder path because it was the right path. General Hayes took over the conversation. Rivera, we're here to offer you an opportunity that's rarely extended to someone at your experience level. We want to fast-track your development through specialized training programs designed to prepare exceptional individuals for high-impact missions. Marcus felt his heart rate increase. What kind of missions, ma'am? Colonel Morrison answered. The kind where individual excellence and moral courage can prevent international incidents, save civilian lives, and protect American interests in ways that conventional forces cannot. Special operations, Marcus said, understanding dawning. More than that, General Hayes clarified. We're talking about a career track that could lead to some of the most challenging and important assignments in the modern military, but it requires immediate commitment to an accelerated and extremely demanding training program. Deputy Director Chen leaned forward. Marcus, I want you to understand what we're offering and what we're asking. The training will push you beyond anything you've experienced. The missions will require you to make split-second decisions with global implications. The personal cost will be significant. But, Colonel Morrison added, the opportunity to serve at the highest levels and make a real difference in the world is unparalleled. Marcus absorbed the information carefully. Everything in his life had led to this moment. The challenges of his childhood, the discipline learned from his grandfather, the leadership skills developed through necessity, and the military training that had revealed his potential. What would I need to do? He asked. General Hayes smiled. First, you need to graduate basic training as the honor graduate of your class. Based on your current performance, that's achievable. Second, Agent Carter continued, you'd enter an accelerated advanced individual training program that combines traditional military skills with specialized capabilities. This includes advanced weapons training, multiple language instruction, cultural immersion programs, and leadership development. Colonel Morrison added the final piece. Third, you'd be evaluated for assignment to specialized units that handle the military's most sensitive missions. Not everyone who enters the program completes it, and not everyone who completes it receives these assignments. What's the timeline? Marcus asked. 18 months from your graduation to potential operational assignments, General Hayes replied. Compared to the normal 4 to 6 years for similar opportunities, it's extremely accelerated. The room fell silent as Marcus considered the offer. He thought about his grandfather's dreams, his sister's hopes for his success, and the kids in his neighborhood who needed to see that different futures were possible. I'm honored by the opportunity, he said finally. But I need to ask, why me? There must be other candidates with better qualifications and more traditional backgrounds. Deputy Director Chen smiled. Marcus, your non-traditional background is exactly why we're interested. You've demonstrated the ability to succeed in environments where others have advantages you lack. You've shown moral courage when taking ethical stands cost you socially. And you've proven that you can lead people who initially doubted your qualifications. Colonel Morrison nodded agreement. In special operations, we often work in environments where traditional military approaches aren't sufficient. We need people who can adapt, improvise, and maintain their ethical framework under extreme pressure. Your background has prepared you for those challenges in ways that conventional training cannot. General Hayes stood up, signaling that the formal presentation was concluding. We need an answer, Rivera, not today but soon. This opportunity won't wait indefinitely. Marcus stood as well, his mind clear despite the magnitude of the decision before him. General, with respect, I don't need time to think about it. I accept your offer. The response seemed to surprise even these senior officers. Agent Carter raised an eyebrow. You're certain this will change your entire life trajectory? Ma'am, my life trajectory changed the day I decided to enlist. This is just continuing in the direction I was already heading. General Hayes extended her hand. Welcome to the program, Rivera. Don't make us regret this decision. I won't, ma'ams. As Marcus left Building 7, his mind was already shifting into planning mode. He had 7 weeks to complete basic training at the top of his class, and then his real education would begin. The challenges ahead would make everything he had experienced so far seem simple in comparison. But for the first time since arriving at Fort Braxton, Marcus felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Walking back to the barracks, he noticed the black helicopter preparing for departure. As he watched, a figure in General's uniform emerged from Building 7 and walked toward the aircraft. Even from a distance, Marcus could tell that this was someone whose authority extended far beyond Fort Braxton. The helicopter lifted off into the evening sky, carrying with it the architects of Marcus's new future. But the real work, the preparation, the training, the proof of worthiness, that would happen right here, one day at a time. Marcus Rivera was ready for the challenge. The final weeks of basic training took on a different quality for Marcus Rivera. Word of his selection for special programs had spread through the base in the way that important news always travels in military communities, quickly, quietly, and with growing embellishment. But instead of the resentment he might have expected, Marcus found himself surrounded by cadets who seemed genuinely proud to serve alongside someone who had achieved such recognition. It's like having a celebrity in our unit, Williams joked one morning during PT. Except this celebrity can actually do everything he's famous for. The comment drew laughs from the other cadets, but Marcus noticed the underlying respect in their voices. Over the months of training, he had transformed from an outsider trying to prove himself into a leader whose success reflected well on everyone around him. Johnson had become particularly invested in Marcus's achievement. You know what this means, he said as they prepared their gear for the day's final major exercise. It means they were wrong. All those people who said kids from your neighborhood couldn't make it in the military, you just proved them completely wrong. Marcus adjusted his equipment with the precision that had become second nature. I didn't do this to prove anyone wrong. I did it because it was the right path forward. Same result though, Martinez chimed in. You've opened doors that other people thought would stay closed forever. The observation carried more weight than Marcus initially realized. Over the past weeks, he had received letters from his sister describing changes in their old neighborhood. Word of his success had reached home, and suddenly kids who had never considered military service were asking questions about enlistment and opportunities. It's like you gave them permission to dream bigger, his sister had written. They see you succeeding and they think maybe they can too. The responsibility of that impact was both humbling and motivating. Marcus wasn't just representing himself anymore. He was representing every young person who had been told their background disqualified them from certain opportunities. The final exercise was designed to test everything the cadets had learned: leadership under pressure, tactical decision-making, teamwork, and adaptability. Marcus found himself designated as overall exercise commander, responsible for coordinating multiple teams in a complex scenario that simulated real-world military operations. Your mission, announced Major Patterson, is to coordinate a multi-phase operation involving reconnaissance, assault, and extraction. You'll have 4 teams, limited resources, and a rapidly evolving tactical situation. Marcus studied the briefing materials with the systematic approach he had developed over months of training. The scenario was deliberately complex, designed to overwhelm commanders who couldn't prioritize and adapt under pressure. Johnson, you'll lead Team Alpha on reconnaissance, Marcus assigned. Williams, Team Bravo handles initial assault. Martinez takes Team Charlie for support and logistics. Thompson, Team Delta is our extraction specialists. Each assignment played to the strengths Marcus had observed in his fellow cadets, while ensuring that critical capabilities were distributed across the force. The exercise began before dawn with Marcus coordinating from a tactical operations center that allowed him to monitor all teams simultaneously. Within the first hour, the scenario had thrown multiple unexpected challenges at his teams: equipment failures, casualties, changing enemy positions, and weather complications. Command, this is Alpha, Johnson's voice crackled over the radio. We've encountered unexpected resistance at Checkpoint 3. Request instructions. Marcus reviewed the tactical display, processing multiple streams of information simultaneously. Johnson's team was pinned down, but Marcus could see opportunities that weren't apparent from the team's ground-level perspective. Alpha, hold position. Bravo, can you provide flanking support from your current location? Affirmative, command, give us 3 minutes to reposition. Charlie, I need you to create a diversion on the eastern approach. Something visible enough to draw attention but not significant enough to commit your main force. The coordination required split-second decision-making and constant adaptation as the scenario evolved. Marcus found himself managing not just tactical challenges, but also the psychological pressure on his teams as they faced simulated casualties and equipment failures. Delta, enemy extraction route has changed. New exfil point is coordinates 234,567. Can you reach it in time? That's a stretch, command, but we'll make it work. As the exercise progressed, Marcus noticed something remarkable happening. His teams weren't just following orders. They were anticipating his tactical intentions and adapting their actions to support the overall mission without needing detailed instructions. Command, Alpha here. I see an opportunity to advance if Bravo can provide suppressing fire in 30 seconds. Bravo copies and is moving to position. The level of coordination and mutual support was extraordinary, and Marcus realized that it reflected months of training together, learning each other's capabilities, and building trust through shared challenges. The final phase of the exercise required all teams to coordinate a complex extraction under simulated enemy fire while protecting civilian casualties. It was the kind of scenario that separated competent commanders from exceptional ones. All teams, this is command. Execute extraction plan Charlie. I repeat, extraction plan Charlie. The plan Marcus had developed required precise timing and absolute trust between teams. Johnson's unit would create a diversion, Williams would secure the extraction zone, Martinez would handle casualty evacuation, and Thompson would coordinate transportation. The execution was flawless. Each team performed their assigned role while adapting to real-time changes in the tactical situation. Most importantly, they maintained communication and mutual support throughout the high-stress final phase. Exercise complete, came the announcement. All objectives achieved, 0 casualties, mission success. The debriefing session was conducted by a panel that included not only Major Patterson, but also Colonel Mitchell and several other senior officers who had been observing the exercise. Rivera, Colonel Mitchell began, that was exceptional command presence and tactical coordination. Your teams performed like seasoned veterans rather than basic training cadets. Major Patterson nodded agreement. More significantly, you demonstrated the ability to bring out the best performance in your subordinates. That's a rare quality that cannot be taught. One of the observing officers, a Colonel Marcus hadn't met before, leaned forward. Rivera, your teams clearly trust your leadership completely. How did you build that kind of confidence? Marcus considered the question carefully. Sir, I think it came from working alongside them for months, learning their strengths and weaknesses, and consistently making decisions that prioritize their safety and success over personal recognition. Elaborate on that. Leadership isn't about being the smartest person in the room or having all the answers. It's about understanding your people well enough to put them in positions where they can succeed, and then supporting them when challenges arise. The panel exchanged glances, clearly impressed with both the performance and the leadership philosophy. Rivera, Colonel Mitchell said, you'll be graduating as honor graduate of your basic training class. More importantly, you've demonstrated the qualities we hoped to see when we first identified you for advanced opportunities. As the formal debriefing concluded, Marcus found himself approached by the unknown colonel who had asked about team building. Rivera, I'm Colonel David Harrison from the Special Operations Command. I wanted to personally congratulate you on your performance today. Marcus snapped to attention, thank you, sir. More than that, I wanted you to know that your next phase of training will begin immediately after graduation. We're moving you directly into advanced programs that will prepare you for operational assignments. The news was both exciting and sobering. Marcus had known this moment would come, but the reality of leaving Fort Braxton and his fellow cadets created an unexpected emotional response. Sir, what about my team? They've been essential to my success here. Colonel Harrison smiled. That's exactly the kind of response that confirms we made the right choice. Your concern for your fellow soldiers is noted and appreciated, but now you need to focus on the next level of challenges. That evening, Marcus's final night at Fort Braxton, he found himself surrounded by the cadets who had become his closest friends and strongest supporters. "It's weird," Williams said as they sat outside the barracks looking at the stars. "6 months ago, half of us didn't think you belonged here. Now it feels like this place won't be the same without you." Johnson, who had traveled the furthest in his relationship with Marcus, was more direct. "You changed all of us, you know that, not just how we think about leadership, but how we think about what's possible." "You guys changed me too," Marcus replied honestly. "I came here thinking I had to prove myself to everyone. You taught me that earning respect is different from demanding it." Martinez, ever practical, brought up the obvious question. "So what happens next? Special operations training, special missions?" Marcus looked up at the night sky, thinking about the path that had brought him to this moment and the unknown challenges that lay ahead. "I honestly don't know, but whatever it is, I'm ready for it." Thompson, who had remained quiet through most of the conversation, finally spoke up. "Marcus, promise us something. Whatever you end up doing, whatever missions they give you, remember that you're representing all of us. Show them what soldiers from Fort Braxton can accomplish." The weight of that representation for his fellow cadets, his neighborhood, his family, and everyone who had been written off because of their circumstances, settled on Marcus's shoulders like a familiar burden that he was ready to carry. "I promise," he said simply. The next morning brought graduation ceremonies, final inspections, and the formal transition from basic training to the next phase of military service. As Marcus stood at attention receiving recognition as honor graduate, he could see his drill sergeants, fellow cadets, and observing officers all sharing in the moment. But his attention was drawn to a figure standing at the back of the ceremony area, a general whose presence commanded immediate respect from everyone who noticed her. Even from a distance, Marcus could tell this was the same person whose helicopter had first appeared months earlier, setting in motion the chain of events that had led to this moment. As the ceremony concluded and cadets began saying their goodbyes, the general approached Marcus directly. "Cadet Rivera," she said, and Marcus snapped to attention. "I'm General Patricia Hayes, we've met before." "Yes, ma'am." "Congratulations on your graduation and selection for advanced training. You've exceeded every expectation we had when we first identified you." "Thank you, ma'am. I've had exceptional support from my fellow cadets and instructors." General Hayes smiled. "That's the kind of response that tells me we made the right choice. Your next phase of training begins tomorrow at Fort Campbell. You'll be working with some of the finest soldiers in the Army, and the challenges will be unlike anything you've experienced." She paused, studying Marcus with the intensity of someone who had seen many promising young soldiers over her career. "Rivera, you have the potential to accomplish extraordinary things in service to your country. Don't waste that opportunity." "I won't, ma'ams." As General Hayes walked away toward the waiting helicopter, Marcus realized that his journey from the streets of East LA to military leadership was really just beginning. The challenges ahead would test everything he had learned and push him beyond his current capabilities. But as he looked around at Fort Braxton one final time, the place where he had proven that background didn't determine destiny, where he had learned to lead through service, and where he had discovered capabilities he never knew he possessed, Marcus Rivera felt ready for whatever came next. The fresh cadet who had stepped off a transport bus 6 months earlier no longer existed. In his place stood a soldier prepared to serve at the highest levels, carry the hopes of those who believed in him, and prove that excellence could emerge from anywhere when combined with determination, character, and opportunity. The helicopter's rotors were spinning up in the distance, and Marcus's next chapter was about to begin.